The alarm sirens screamed through every station in Sector 9. Red lights flashed in the command center of the Galactic Council's defense headquarters. Officers ran from station to station, their faces pale with fear. Something had come through the spatial anomaly near the mining colonies, and it was destroying everything in its path. Commander Taeyang stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, watching the main view screen with growing dread. The creature they were approaching looked like something from a nightmare. It was massive, perhaps 30 meters from head to tail, with black scales that seemed to absorb light itself. 6 glowing eyes, each the size of a transport pod, tracked the movement of ships around it. Its mandibles opened and closed, showing rows of teeth that gleamed like crystals. The mining colony, Delta 7, had been the first to spot it. The creature had appeared suddenly, emerging from a tear in space that the scientists still could not explain. At first, the miners thought it might be a new type of ship. Then it started eating the asteroids. Then it started destroying the mining equipment. By the time the colony called for help, 3 ore processors had been torn apart, and dozens of workers were missing. Taeyang had brought 20 ships with him. The best vessels in the Council fleet, armed with weapons that could crack planets. He felt confident as they approached. The creature was big, yes, but it was just one animal. How dangerous could it be? He learned the answer within the first 5 minutes of engagement. The creature turned its massive head toward the fleet. Its 6 eyes focused on the lead ships. Then, it opened its mouth and roared. The sound traveled through space itself, a sonic weapon that no one had predicted. The vibrations shattered viewports on the closest 3 vessels. Hull plates buckled and tore. One ship simply broke apart, its structure unable to withstand the pressure wave. Taeyang grabbed his command chair as his own ship shuddered. Alarms blared across every console. The engineering officer shouted that they had lost 17% of their hull integrity from one roar. One roar from 2 kilometers away. The fleet opened fire. Energy beams, kinetic missiles, plasma charges, everything they had. The weapons struck the creature's black scales and simply bounced off or exploded harmlessly. The creature did not even seem to notice. It swept one massive limb through space and caught a destroyer, crushing the ship like paper. Then it roared again, and 2 more vessels went silent, their crews dead from the sonic attack. Taeyang ordered a retreat. He had lost half his fleet in less than 10 minutes. The survivors limped back to the nearest station, their commander staring at the casualty reports in disbelief. 20 ships, the best weapons in the galaxy, and they had not even scratched the thing. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss the crisis. The creature was moving steadily through Sector 9, consuming asteroids and destroying any vessel that came near it. Projections showed it would reach inhabited planets within 3 weeks. Billions of lives were at risk. Ambassador Heywan, a veteran diplomat who had served the Council for 40 years, listened as species after species proposed solutions. The Velthari, beings made of living crystal, suggested using harmonic weapons that could shatter molecular bonds. They tried. The creature's roar disrupted the harmonics before they could take effect, and the Velthari fleet barely escaped. The Mindweavers, telepathic beings who could bend thoughts across star systems, offered to subdue the creature mentally. 6 of their strongest psychics combined their power and reached out to touch the creature's mind. 5 of them fell into comas. The 6th reported only chaos and pain before losing consciousness. The creature's mind was too alien, too powerful, too different from anything they had encountered. The Krath, proud warriors who had never lost a ground battle in their history, sent their greatest champions. 20 fighters in powered armor, each strong enough to tear through starship bulkheads. They landed on the creature's back and began attacking with weapons that could cut through diamond. The creature simply rolled in space, and the Gi forces threw them off. Half of them died when their armor failed. The others gave up and retreated. Week after week, the attempts continued. Scientists tried to study the creature from a distance, but it destroyed their probes. Military strategists planned complex ambushes, but the creature seemed to sense danger and avoided traps. Religious leaders prayed for divine intervention. Nothing worked. The creature continued its path of destruction. It had now destroyed 47 ships, 6 mining stations, and countless automated facilities. The death toll had passed 3,000. Evacuation orders were issued for every planet in its projected path. Refugee fleets struggled to move billions of civilians to safety. Panic spread like a virus across the sector. Commander Taeyang sat in strategy meetings day after day, watching as every plan failed. He had aged 10 years in the past 2 months. The creature haunted his dreams. He could still hear the sound of his ships breaking apart, still see the faces of the crew members he had lost. The military wanted to use planet-killer weapons, massive bombs that could destroy entire worlds, but the creature moved too fast, and the Council refused to risk hitting inhabited systems. Ambassador Hae-won felt the weight of failure pressing down on her. She had helped negotiate peace treaties between warring empires. She had solved crises that seemed impossible. But this was different. They were not fighting an enemy they could talk to or understand. They were facing a force of nature, and nature did not negotiate. In her office late one night, Hae-won reviewed the files on every species in the Council. There had to be someone, somewhere, who could help. Some culture or civilization that had dealt with creatures like this before. Her eyes passed over hundreds of entries. Then she stopped at one file. Humans, the newest members of the Galactic Council, having joined only 40 years ago. Most of the older species still considered them primitive. They had no special powers like the Mindweavers, no advanced technology like the Velthari, no warrior tradition like the Krath. They were just humans. Small, and weak, and unremarkable. But Hae-won remembered something about humans. During the admission debates, several council members had mentioned their strange behavior toward other species. Humans formed emotional bonds with almost any creature they encountered. They kept animals as companions, treated them like family members. There were stories of humans risking their lives to save creatures that most species would consider pests or dangers. It was a desperate idea. Probably foolish. But they had tried everything else. Hae-won brought the proposal to the council the next morning. The response was exactly what she expected. Laughter from some representatives. Outrage from others. Commander Taeyang actually stood up and argued against it. Send a human to face the creature that had destroyed entire fleets? It was suicide. It was a waste of time. It was insulting to suggest that humans could succeed where everyone else had failed. But Council Member Kyung-soo, one of the human representatives, supported the idea. He knew his people well. He knew how they thought, how they approached problems differently. He made a passionate speech about human methods, about their strange ability to connect with other living things. He reminded the council that they had no other options. The creature would reach the first inhabited planet in 11 days. 11 days to find a solution, or begin the largest evacuation in galactic history. The vote was close, but it passed. The council would contact Earth and request their help. They would send for a human specialist in alien life forms. They would try one more time, using methods that seemed crazy to everyone else. Ambassador Hae-won sent the message herself. She did not know if this would work. She did not even know if it made sense. But she had to try. The entire sector depended on it. On Earth, a woman named Ji-woo received the message and began packing her bag. The human research vessel was small and plain, nothing like the grand warships that filled the council station's docking bays. Ji-woo stepped off the loading ramp, carrying a single backpack and a scanning device. She was in her early 30s, with short dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple blue jumpsuit with patches from various research missions. No armor, no weapons, no military decorations. Commander Taeyang watched her approach and felt his hope die. This was their expert? This was the person who would save Sector 9? She looked like a university student, not a warrior or a genius scientist. He had expected someone impressive. someone with confidence and power. Ji-woo looked like she had just finished a camping trip. The command center was filled with military officers and council representatives. Large screens showed the creature's current position and projected path. Red markers indicated destroyed stations and lost ships. Everyone in the room had lost people to this monster. They all wanted revenge, wanted justice, wanted the creature dead. They looked at Ji-woo with skepticism and barely hidden anger. Taeyang began the briefing without any pleasantries. He played footage of the attacks, ships exploding, stations breaking apart, the creature's 6 eyes glowing as it roared, the death count climbing higher each day. He spoke about the failed attempts to stop it, the weapons that had no effect, the warriors who had died trying. His voice was bitter and tired. Ji-woo watched the footage quietly. She took notes on her datapad, her stylus moving steadily. She did not look shocked or scared. She just watched and wrote. When the briefing ended, she raised her hand like a student in a classroom. Taeyang nodded to her, trying to hide his disappointment. This was the human expert? Ji-woo asked her first question. Does it sleep? The military officers looked at each other. No one had thought to check. The creature was a threat, not a research subject. Ji-woo made a note and asked another question. What does it eat besides metal? Again, confused looks. The creature consumed asteroids. Sometimes, ships. That was all they knew. Ji-woo wrote something else down. Then she asked a question that made several officers laugh. Has anyone tried not shooting at it? Commander Taeyang felt his patience snap. He stood up and pointed at the screen, showing the casualty reports. 3,000 dead. More than 50 ships destroyed. 6 stations in ruins. And this human wanted to know if they had tried being nice to it? Ji-woo looked at him with those calm eyes and waited for the anger to pass. Then she spoke quietly. Every action in those videos was defensive. The creature only attacked after being approached by armed vessels. It destroyed stations only after they fired weapons at it. Yes, it was eating asteroids, but that suggested it was hungry, not malicious. Had anyone considered that the creature might be scared? The room went silent. Scared? This monster that had destroyed entire fleets? Ambassador Haewon leaned forward in her seat, interested despite herself. She asked Ji-woo to explain. Ji-woo pulled up the footage again and ran through it frame by frame. She pointed out details that everyone had missed. The way the creature's body posture changed when ships approached. The elevated energy readings before each roar, suggesting stress. The fact that it always moved away from large groups of ships when possible. The pattern of its attacks showed a frightened animal defending itself, not a predator hunting prey. Council member Kyung-soo nodded slowly. He had read Ji-woo's file before she arrived. She had spent 15 years studying animal behavior across dozens of worlds. She had made first contact with 3 species that everyone else thought were mindless beasts. She saw things that others missed because she looked for understanding instead of threats. Ji-woo made her request. She wanted to observe the creature directly. She wanted to approach it in a small shuttle. Alone. Without any weapons or military escort. She wanted to try communication without violence. The room exploded with objections. Commander Taeyang said it was suicide. The Velthari ambassador called it foolish. The Kroth representative said it dishonored the warriors who had already died. Even Ambassador Haewon looked uncertain, sending an unarmed human in a tiny shuttle toward a creature that destroyed battleships. It seemed like murder, but Ji-woo remained calm. She explained her reasoning. Large ships with weapons represented a threat. The creature had learned to attack threats, but a small vessel, unarmed, unthreatening, might not trigger the same defensive response. Animals on Earth would flee from armed hunters, but approach curious observers. The creature might be intelligent enough to recognize the difference. Kyung-soo supported her. He reminded the council that they had tried every military option. They had sent warriors and weapons, and fleets. All had failed. What did they have to lose by trying something different? The evacuation fleets were still struggling. Millions of people were not yet safe. They needed more time, and military action only made the creature more aggressive. Maybe Ji-Woo's approach would at least keep it calm while they evacuated. The debate lasted for hours. Ambassador Hei-Won finally made the decision. Ji-Woo could make her attempt. One small shuttle, unarmed, with full sensor coverage so they could learn from whatever happened. If it worked, they might find a new solution. If it failed, they would at least have tried everything possible. Ji-Woo spent the next day preparing. She studied every piece of footage they had of the creature. She analyzed its movements, its vocalizations, its behavior patterns. She ran simulations on her scanner, trying to predict how it might react to different approaches. She reviewed her notes from dozens of other species, looking for anything similar. Commander Taeyang visited her in the research lab. He still thought this was a mistake, but he felt responsible for her. She would die because the council was desperate, and he would have to watch another person lose their life to that monster. He asked her bluntly. Why was she doing this? What made her think she could succeed where everyone else had failed? Ji-Woo looked up from her work. She told him about her childhood on Earth. She had grown up on a farm where her family raised animals. She had learned early that creatures acted aggressively for reasons: fear, pain, confusion, protecting territory or young. An animal that seemed dangerous was usually just scared or hurt. Understanding the reason was the first step to finding peace. Taeyang asked what happened when understanding failed. When the creature was truly dangerous and could not be reasoned with, Ji-Woo was quiet for a moment. Then she said that would be unfortunate, but they would not know until they tried. Shooting first and asking questions later meant never learning the truth. She owed it to those 3,000 dead to at least attempt understanding. The day of the mission arrived. Ji-Woo boarded a small shuttle in the main hangar bay. The vessel was barely big enough for one person. With minimal life support and no weapon systems, she had her scanner, her backpack, and her determination. Council members and military officers gathered to watch, though many could not meet her eyes. They felt like they were watching an execution. Ambassador Hei-Won spoke to Ji-Woo privately before she left. She thanked her for volunteering, for being brave enough to try. She apologized that it had come to this, that they were sending an unarmed civilian to face their greatest threat. If anything happened, she wanted Ji-Woo to know that the council would honor her memory and her courage. Ji-Woo smiled and said she would do her best to come back and accept that honor in person. Then she climbed into the shuttle and sealed the hatch. The small vessel launched from the station and headed toward the creature's last known position. Every ship in the sector watched their sensors. Command centers across multiple stations monitored the feeds. Scientists recorded every detail. Military officers prepared to retrieve her body if the worst happened. Commander Taeyang stood on his bridge, watching the tracking screen. The small dot representing Ji-Woo's shuttle moved steadily toward the large signature of the creature. His hand hovered over the communications panel, ready to order an immediate rescue if she called for help. He did not think she would have time to call. The creature would destroy her shuttle in seconds. The shuttle continued forward, closer and closer to the creature. The tension in every command center was unbearable. People held their breath. Some prayed. Others simply stared at their screens, unable to look away. Then, Ji-Woo's shuttle entered visual range of the creature. The massive black shape filled her viewport. 6 glowing eyes turned toward her tiny vessel. The mandibles opened, showing those crystal teeth. Energy began gathering in the creature's throat, the warning sign before it roared. Everyone watching expected to see another ship destroyed, another life lost, another failure. But Ji-Woo did not run. She did not power up shields or try to dodge. She simply kept her shuttle at a steady, slow approach. And she began to speak. Ji-Woo's voice broadcast on an open channel that every station could hear. Her tone was soft and steady. The kind of voice someone might use with a frightened animal. Easy there. Easy. No one's going to hurt you. The creature loomed before her like a mountain of living darkness. Up close, it was even more terrifying than the footage showed. The black scales seemed to shift and move, reflecting no light at all. The 6 eyes blazed with energy that could probably vaporize her shuttle with a glance. The mandibles were the size of cargo containers, lined with teeth that looked sharp enough to cut through reality itself. Energy continued building in the creature's throat. A soft glow appeared between its jaws, growing brighter. Everyone watching knew what came next. The sonic roar that had destroyed so many ships. Jiwoo's small shuttle would not survive even a fraction of that power. But Jiwoo kept speaking in that same calm voice. "You're scared, aren't you? All these ships shooting at you. All this noise. You just want them to stop." Her scanner was running continuously, gathering data that no one else had bothered to collect. The readings appeared on her datapad, in streams of numbers and graphs. Heart rate elevated. Stress hormones present in detectable amounts through electromagnetic readings. Body temperature spiking. Defensive posture. All the biological signs pointed to one conclusion that changed everything. The creature was terrified. Jiwoo continued speaking, her voice gentle and understanding. "You're not a monster. You're just lost and frightened. Something pushed you through that anomaly into our space, and we've been shooting at you ever since. None of this is your fault." The glow in the creature's throat flickered. The energy gathering there began to dissipate. The 6 eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in what might have been confusion. The massive head tilted slightly to one side, an almost curious gesture that looked strange on something so large and dangerous. On the command station, Taeyang stared at his view screen in disbelief. The creature had not attacked. It had been seconds away from destroying the shuttle, and then it just stopped. The energy signature was fading. The aggressive posture was softening. What was happening? Ambassador Hae-won gripped her armrest, hardly daring to breathe. She had authorized this mission, expecting tragedy. Now she watched, as something impossible unfolded. The creature that had killed thousands, that had destroyed fleets, was listening to a human woman speak softly to it. Jiwoo maneuvered her shuttle closer. Much closer than any vessel had approached before, and survived. She was now less than 100 meters from the creature's face, close enough to see details in those black scales. Close enough to see the individual facets in each of its 6 eyes. Close enough that one swipe of its limbs would crush her shuttle like an insect. She spoke again, and this time her voice held something deeper than just calm. She spoke with empathy, with understanding, with the tone of someone who genuinely cared. "You're not a destroyer. You're not evil. You're just alone and scared, and everything has been hurting you. I'm so sorry. We should have tried to understand you first. We should have tried to help instead of attacking." The creature's entire body posture changed. The tension that had been visible in every movement began to fade. The mandibles slowly closed. The eyes dimmed slightly, no longer blazing with defensive energy. Something in Jiwoo's voice seemed to reach through the fear and aggression to touch whatever mind existed inside that massive form. Then Jiwoo did something that made every military officer in the sector shout warnings. She opened her shuttle's external hatch. The small airlock cycled, and she emerged into space wearing only a standard EVA suit. No armor. No weapons. Just a human in a thin suit, floating in the void directly in front of a creature that could kill her with a thought. Taeyang was already ordering a rescue ship to launch. This was suicide. The woman had gone insane. But before he could finish the order, Kyung-soo stopped him. "Wait. Just wait and watch." Jiwoo reached into her backpack and pulled out something small. A stuffed animal, worn and faded from years of handling. It was shaped like a dog, one of Earth's most common companion animals. She held it up where the creature could see it clearly. Her voice came through the suit's communication system. "I know you're alone out here. I brought a friend. This is what we do on Earth when someone is lonely. We share something that brings comfort. The six eyes focused on the small object. The massive head tilted further, and for the first time, the creature made a sound that was not a roar. It was softer, questioning, almost like a whale's call echoing through the ocean depths. The sound carried through space in ways that should not have been possible, a vibration that every ship in range could detect. Jiwoo used her suit's small thrusters to float closer. She moved slowly, telegraphing every motion so the creature could track her approach. Closer to that massive face. Closer to those teeth that could shred her suit and her body in an instant. Closer until she was within arm's reach of the black scales that had resisted every weapon the galaxy could deploy. She extended her hand, moving with careful deliberation. Her gloved fingers touched the creature's scales, just below one of the sensory ridges that ran along its head. The contact was gentle, barely more than a brush of fingertips against that obsidian surface. The creature went absolutely still. Not the stillness of a predator preparing to strike, but the frozen moment of surprise. Every sensor on every ship showed the same thing. The creature had stopped moving entirely, as if it could not believe what was happening. Jiwoo's voice was barely a whisper now. "It's okay. You're okay now. I'm here. And I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe." Then she began to scratch gently at a spot just behind one of the sensory ridges. Her movement was rhythmic and soothing. The kind of scratch someone might give to a beloved pet. She did not know if the creature could even feel it through those scales, but she tried anyway. What happened next became the moment that changed galactic history. The creature made a sound. Deep and resonant. It rumbled through space like distant thunder. But it was not the devastating sonic weapon that had destroyed so many ships. It was something else entirely. Something that took a moment for the sensors to identify because it seemed so impossible. The creature was purring. Scientists scrambled to verify the readings. Military officers demanded explanations. But the data was clear. The vibration pattern matched the contentment sounds made by countless species across the galaxy when they felt safe and happy. The massive creature, the terror of Sector 9, was making the same sound that a house cat on Earth might make when petted by its owner. The creature shifted its position in space, moving with surprising grace for something so large. It angled its massive head to give Jiwoo better access to the spot she was scratching. The six eyes half closed, and the aggressive tension that had defined its every movement since arriving in their dimension simply melted away. Jiwoo continued the gentle scratching, speaking softly. "There you go. That feels good, doesn't it? You've been so tense, so frightened. You can relax now. You're safe." Her scanner continued gathering data. The biological readings had transformed completely. Stress hormones dropping rapidly, heart rate stabilizing, body temperature normalizing. The creature was even producing what appeared to be endorphins, chemicals associated with pleasure and contentment in many species. Every measurement supported what looked impossible, but was clearly true. The creature was not a monster. It was a frightened, lonely being that had been defending itself against constant attacks. And now, for the first time since arriving in this dimension, it felt safe enough to let its guard down. Ambassador Hei-1 found tears running down her face. All those deaths. All that destruction. And it could have been prevented if someone had just tried to understand, instead of attacking. The weight of that realization hurt worse than any weapon. Taeyang sat down heavily in his command chair. He had lost crew members, friends, good people to this creature, and now he watched as a single, unarmed human did what entire fleets could not. She made peace. Jiwoo continued her examination, still maintaining that physical contact with the creature. She was gathering more data in these few minutes than all the military scans had collected in months. Her scientific mind worked through the information, while her hands kept up that soothing rhythm of scratching. She spoke to the command channel. "I'm designating this creature Dae. It's from a Korean word meaning great. Dae is not hostile. Dae is a juvenile, barely an adolescent of its species. Day was pulled through the anomaly from another dimension where it fed on asteroid fields. When it arrived here and found similar asteroids, it began feeding. Then, we started shooting. Every attack was self-defense. Every destroyed ship was Day trying to survive. She paused, and her voice held both wonder and sadness. Day is intelligent. Not like us, but aware and capable of understanding. Day has been trying to flee this entire time, but every time Day moved, we sent more ships to attack. We never gave Day a chance to show peaceful intent. The implications spread through every command center. They had not been fighting a monster. They had been terrorizing a lost child. The days following first contact changed everything. Ji-Woo remained near Day, returning to her shuttle only for rest and supplies. She spent hours floating beside the massive creature, maintaining physical contact while she worked. Day seemed to crave that contact, always adjusting position to stay close to the small human who had finally shown kindness. Commander Taeyong watched through the monitors, still struggling to accept what he was seeing. The creature that had haunted his nightmares, that had killed so many of his crew, was now gentle and calm. Day moved carefully around Ji-Woo's shuttle, always aware of where the fragile human was. When other ships approached to deliver supplies, Day showed no aggression as long as they moved slowly and stayed at a distance. Ji-Woo worked methodically to understand Day's biology and needs. Her scanner revealed fascinating details. Day's scales were not just armor, but complex organs that absorbed certain types of radiation and converted it to energy. The creature could photosynthesize like a plant, but with cosmic radiation instead of sunlight. The asteroids Day consumed provided essential minerals that this process could not create. The sonic roar that had destroyed so many ships was actually a complex organ system meant for communication. Day's species used modulated sonic waves to speak across vast distances in space. The devastating roar had been Day's distress call, the equivalent of a lost child screaming for help. Every time the fleets attacked, Day had been crying out in fear and pain, not knowing why these small beings kept hurting it. Most importantly, Ji-Woo discovered that Day's species were social creatures. They traveled in groups in their home dimension, never meant to be alone. Day had been pulled through the anomaly away from its family, thrown into a strange place full of hostile beings. The loneliness had been almost as painful as the attacks. Ji-Woo began teaching Day to communicate in ways that would not destroy ships. She played different sound frequencies through her shuttle's speakers. Day learned quickly, mimicking the sounds but at much lower volumes. Within 3 days, they had established a basic system. Certain tones meant yes or no. Other patterns indicated hunger, fear, contentment, curiosity. It was primitive compared to language, but it worked. The breakthrough came when Ji-Woo introduced bioluminescent signals. She used lights on her shuttle to create patterns. Day's scales could actually glow, something no one had noticed during combat. Day began creating light patterns in response, simple at first, but growing more complex. It was like watching a child learn to write, clumsy at first, but improving rapidly. Ambassador Hae-won arrived at the research station that had been set up near Day's current location. She needed to see this in person. Not just through monitors, her shuttle approached carefully, following Ji-Woo's instructions exactly. Move slowly. Day watched the ambassador's shuttle approach. The massive creature's body tensed slightly. Old defensive instincts, triggered by the presence of another vessel. But then Ji-Woo's voice came through the communication channel, speaking to Day in that gentle tone. It's okay. This is a friend. She wants to meet you, properly. Day relaxed. The 6 eyes tracked the shuttle, but without aggression. When Hae-won emerged in her EVA suit, Day even moved closer, curious about this new, small being. Hae-won floated near Ji-Woo, staring up at Day's massive face. Up close, the creature was beyond anything she had imagined. Terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Those eyes held clear intelligence, watching her with what could only be described as curiosity. She reached out hesitantly and touched Day's scales. They were warm, almost hot, probably from absorbing radiation. Day made a soft rumbling sound. Content. Accepting. Hei-1 felt tears in her eyes again. She spoke through her communication system, knowing Day could not understand her words but hoping the tone would carry meaning. I am so sorry. We hurt you. We scared you. We should have done better. Ji-woo translated the emotion into their simple communication system with light patterns. Understanding. Regret. Friendship. Day responded with its own pattern. Forgiveness. The pattern was clear and unmistakable. Over the following weeks, more people came to visit. Scientists arrived to study Day with Ji-woo's help, approaching with respect instead of weapons. They discovered that Day's mandibles could manipulate objects with incredible precision. Those teeth that looked so dangerous could carefully move debris or adjust equipment without damaging it. The sonic abilities could be used for communication or even for precise cutting and welding when modulated correctly. Commander Taeyang finally came to meet Day personally. It was difficult for him. Every time he looked at the creature, he remembered the people he had lost, but he had watched the footage of that first contact dozens of times. He had seen the fear in Day's initial behavior, the defensive nature of every action. He knew now that those deaths were tragic, but not murder. Day had been fighting for survival against what it perceived as coordinated attacks. He floated in his EVA suit before Day, trying to keep his emotions controlled. Ji-woo was beside him, offering support. Taeyang spoke, his voice tight with old pain. My crew died afraid and confused. They thought they were protecting the sector from a monster. But we were the monsters, weren't we? Ji-woo placed a hand on his arm. Both sides acted from fear. Both sides made mistakes. The important thing is learning and doing better. Taeyang reached out and touched Day's scales. The creature's eyes focused on him. And for a moment, Taeyang felt a connection he could not explain. It was like Day understood his pain and accepted it without judgment. He stayed there for a long time, one hand on the creature that had destroyed his ship and killed his friends. Eventually, he whispered an apology into the void, and Day responded with a gentle rumble. Ji-woo began demonstrating Day's abilities to the council. She had Day use its sonic abilities to weld a section of hull plating on a damaged station. The precision was perfect, better than automated systems. She had Day carefully move large pieces of debris that were hazards to navigation. The strength was impressive, but it was the care that amazed everyone. Day could be gentle despite its size. The scientists who studied the anomaly made a discovery. The dimensional rift was not natural. Something on the other side had artificial energy signatures. There might be technology there, possibly a portal system. If they could stabilize the anomaly, they might be able to help Day return home. Day's reaction to this news was complex. Ji-woo read the biological signals and the light patterns. Day wanted to go home, wanted to see its family again. But Day also did not want to leave Ji-woo and the few friends it had made here. The creature had formed bonds during these weeks, genuine emotional connections. Ji-woo promised that if they could open a stable portal, they would visit. They would maintain contact. Day would not be alone again. A young researcher named Bo-ra joined the team. She was shy and nervous at first, intimidated by Day's size, but she specialized in dimensional physics, and her knowledge was crucial for understanding the anomaly. Ji-woo introduced her to Day carefully, and within days, Bo-ra was floating beside the massive creature, completely comfortable. The three of them worked together on the anomaly problem. Bo-ra ran calculations while Ji-woo monitored Day's biological responses to different energy frequencies. Day helped by using its sensory organs to detect patterns that instruments could not measure. The creature's natural ability to sense dimensional variations was more sophisticated than anything the Council had built. They discovered that Day's home dimension existed in a slightly different vibrational state. That was why the crossing had been so traumatic. Day's biology had been shocked by the transition, which explained the initial aggression and fear. The creature had been in pain from the moment it arrived. And then the attacks had made everything worse. Word spread across the sector about what was happening. People who had fled their homes began to return. Children asked their parents if they could see the big creature that was friends with the human. Media from hundreds of worlds covered the story. The creature that had been called the Devourer, the terror of Sector 9, was now known as Day, the lost child who had found friendship. Taeyang proposed something to the council. Day had shown incredible abilities and clear intelligence. Day had forgiven them for the attacks and had worked to help repair damage. Day deserved more than just to be studied. Day deserved recognition. The council debated this carefully. No one had ever proposed granting rights to a single individual of an undiscovered species. But the circumstances were unique. Day was clearly self-aware, capable of communication, and had demonstrated moral reasoning by choosing forgiveness over revenge. Ambassador Haewon drafted the proposal herself. Full recognition of Day as a sentient being with rights under galactic law. Protection from harm. Legal status as a citizen of the Council. It was unprecedented. But so was everything about this situation. The vote took place 3 months after Ji-Woo's first contact. Representatives from every member species participated. Some argued against it, saying they did not know enough about Dai's species. Others supported it enthusiastically, seeing it as a chance to correct their earlier mistakes. Council member Kyung-soo made the closing argument. He spoke about how humans had learned long ago that intelligence and personhood came in many forms. He talked about the moral obligation to recognize sentience wherever it appeared. He reminded everyone that their initial reaction had been violence. And look where that had led. Perhaps it was time to try a different approach. The vote passed with a significant majority. Day became the first individual to be granted council citizenship without belonging to a member species. The decision made history and set a precedent that would influence first contact protocols for generations. Ji-Woo floated beside Day when the news came through. She used their light pattern communication to explain what had happened. Day was now recognized, protected, valued. No one would attack Day again. Day had a place here for as long as it wanted. Day's response was a pattern they had never seen before. Complex and beautiful, it seemed to combine every positive emotion they had learned to communicate. And then, Day did something new. The massive creature carefully, gently, moved one of its limbs to touch Ji-Woo's shoulder. It was a gesture of affection, learned from watching how humans showed care to each other. Ji-Woo hugged the limb as best she could. Two beings, from different dimensions, different biologies, different worlds. But connected by understanding and compassion. 1 year after first contact, Sector 9 had transformed. The research station near the dimensional anomaly had grown into a permanent facility. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study the rift and to learn from Day. The creature that had once destroyed everything in its path now helped guide supply ships through dangerous asteroid fields and assisted with construction projects that required strength and precision. Commander Taeyang had requested a transfer to the station. He told himself it was for strategic reasons, to maintain security in the sector. But everyone knew the truth. He came to see Day regularly, floating beside the massive creature in his EVA suit. They had formed an unlikely bond. The military commander and the being he had once tried to destroy. Sometimes they just existed together in comfortable silence. Other times, Taeyang talked about his lost crew, and Day listened with patient attention. Ji-Woo had become Day's official liaison, a position the council created specifically for her. She split her time between research and helping Day communicate with the growing number of visitors. The basic light pattern system had evolved into something more sophisticated. Day could now express complex ideas, ask questions, even show humor. The creature's personality emerged more clearly each day. Day was curious, gentle, playful, and surprisingly patient with the small beings that now filled its life. Ambassador Haywan visited the station often, using it as a neutral ground for difficult negotiations. There was something about Day's presence that made people more willing to find peaceful solutions. Several trade disputes had been resolved, while the negotiators floated near the massive creature, perhaps influenced by the living reminder that understanding was better than conflict. The breakthrough with the anomaly came suddenly. Bo-Ra and her team had been running tests for months, trying to stabilize the dimensional rift. They used Day's sensory abilities to fine-tune their equipment, mapping vibration patterns that their instruments could barely detect. One morning, the readings changed. The anomaly stabilized into a controlled portal, and through it, they detected something incredible. Energy signatures, movement, life. More of Day's species existed on the other side. Jiwoo was with Day when they received the news. She watched as the creature's entire body posture changed. The biological readings showed excitement, mixed with anxiety. Day wanted to see its family, wanted to go home, but Day was also afraid. Afraid of leaving the friends it had made. Afraid the portal might close and trap it on one side or the other. The council approved an expedition through the portal. It would be small, just a handful of ships with volunteers who understood the risks. Jiwoo immediately signed up. Commander Taeyang insisted on leading the security detail. Bo-Ra needed to go to monitor the portal stability. Ambassador Haewon decided that first contact with Day's species required diplomatic presence. They prepared for 3 weeks. The ships were equipped with communication systems based on Day's light patterns and sonic modulations. Weapons were removed entirely. They brought gifts instead, samples of art and music from dozens of cultures, crystallized minerals, and carefully prepared foods that might be compatible with Day's biology. Council member Kyung-soo gave Jiwoo a private message to carry. He had written it in both human languages and in the light pattern code they had developed. It was an apology on behalf of the council for how they had treated Day, and a request for peaceful relations with Day's species. He asked Jiwoo to deliver it personally if they made contact. The day of departure arrived. Day had not slept in the days leading up to it, too excited and nervous. The massive creature stayed close to Jiwoo's shuttle, making soft sounds that their translation system identified as anxiety vocalizations. Jiwoo spoke to Day for a long time before they entered the portal. She promised that whatever happened, they would face it together. If Day wanted to stay in the home dimension, they would visit regularly. If Day wanted to return to this dimension, there would always be a place here. Day was not alone anymore, and would never be alone again. The small fleet entered the portal with Day leading the way. The transition was strange, like passing through thick liquid. Colors shifted in ways that made no sense. For a moment, Jiwoo felt like she existed in multiple places at once. Then they were through. The dimension on the other side was beautiful and alien. Space itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Asteroids glowed with internal light. Stars appeared closer, brighter, more vivid, and there, in the distance, were shapes moving through the void. More of Day's species. Dozens of them. Some even larger than Day, others smaller. They moved together in loose groups, their scales reflecting the strange light in patterns that created flowing colors. Day made a sound that their systems had never recorded before. A call that echoed through space with complex harmonics. Joy and relief and hope all mixed together. The other creatures responded, their calls creating a symphony that made the monitoring equipment struggle to process the data. 3 of the creatures broke away from the larger group and approached. They were massive, making even Day look small. Jiwoo watched the biological readings spike as Day moved forward to meet them. The creatures touched, their limbs intertwining in what was clearly a greeting between family members. Day's parents and older sibling. The family that had lost their youngest when the portal had pulled Day away. Jiwoo felt tears streaming down her face inside her helmet. The reunion was beautiful. These massive beings, expressing such clear emotion through movement and sound. She gave them privacy, keeping her shuttle at a respectful distance. This moment belonged to Day and its family. But after several hours, Day returned to the fleet. The creature's family came too, curious about the small beings that had befriended their lost child. Ji-woo floated out in her Evia suit, and for the first time, she stood before multiple members of Day's species. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Using the light pattern system, Ji-woo introduced herself and explained what had happened. She showed them the message from Kyung-soo, the formal apology, and request for peaceful contact. Day's family listened, their attention focused completely on the small human. Then Day added its own communication. Complex patterns that told the story from Day's perspective. The fear and pain of the initial attacks. The loneliness. And then Ji-woo's arrival. The friendship. The understanding. How the small beings had eventually chosen compassion over violence. Day's mother responded with patterns that their system struggled to translate. The meaning came through slowly. But it was clear. Gratitude. Deep appreciation. For those who had helped her child. An offer of friendship between species. Over the next few days, they learned more about Day's people. They called themselves something that translated roughly as the Travelers. They moved through this dimension in family groups, feeding on asteroid fields and energy from the unique stars in their space. They had noticed the portal, but had been afraid to approach it, not knowing what was on the other side or what had taken their youngest. They had language, culture, and even art. They created patterns in space using their bioluminescence. Temporary sculptures of light that lasted for hours before fading. They had music, complex sonic compositions that told stories. They had history and remembered their ancestors. Ambassador Hae-won was in her element. She conducted formal first contact protocols, exchanging information about cultures and establishing basic diplomatic relations. The travelers were interested in the council, curious about the many species that had banded together. They asked questions about technology, about different forms of life, about how beings so different could coexist peacefully. Commander Tae-yang found himself in an unexpected position. The travelers wanted to know about the conflicts, about why the council ships had attacked Day. He had to explain human nature, how fear often led to violence, how misunderstanding could cause tragedy. He spoke honestly about his own role, about the people who had died, about the mistakes they had made. The travelers listened without judgment. They explained that they understood fear. Their dimension had dangers too, and they had learned to be cautious of the unknown. What impressed them was not that the council had made mistakes, but that they had been willing to change. That Ji-woo had approached with open hands instead of weapons. That they were here now, seeking to make amends and build something better. Day's older sibling, who they learned was named in a pattern that translated to Bright Wing, was particularly interested in the technology the council had developed. Bora spent hours explaining dimensional physics and portal mechanics. Brightwing understood the concepts quickly and offered insights from their own natural ability to sense dimensional variations. Together, they developed improvements to the portal that would make it more stable and easier to use. After 2 weeks, it was time to make a decision. The portal was stable enough for regular travel, but maintaining it required resources. The council needed to know if Day wanted to stay in this home dimension or return to the one where they had met. Day communicated with its family for a long time. Then the answer came in patterns that everyone understood. Day wanted to go back, not because this home was not wonderful, but because Day had made commitments and friendships. Day wanted to serve as a bridge between the dimensions, teaching both sides about each other. Day's family supported this choice, proud that their youngest had found purpose and connection. But Day would visit regularly. And Brightwing wanted to come back through the portal too, curious to learn more about the council and the many species there. The travelers as a whole wanted to establish formal relations, to share knowledge and perhaps even travel between dimensions more freely in the future. The fleet returned through the portal with Day and Brightwing. The homecoming was celebrated across the sector. Two creatures that had once been feared as potential threats were now welcomed as honored guests and citizens. The council held a formal ceremony to establish diplomatic relations with the travelers. It was the first treaty ever signed with beings from another dimension. Ambassador Hei-Wan conducted the ceremony while Day and Brightwing watched, their scales glowing with patterns that expressed pride and hope. Life in Sector 9 settled into a new normal. Day continued to help with various projects. Now joined by Brightwing, the two creatures became a common sight, their massive forms moving through the sector with grace and purpose. Ships no longer fled when they approached. Children wanted to visit them. Scientists collaborated with them on research that benefited everyone. Jiwoo expanded the research station to accommodate the growing interest in interdimensional studies. Young researchers came from across the galaxy to learn. Bo-Ra became the head of portal physics. Her early shyness completely gone. She and Brightwing published papers together that advanced dimensional science by decades. Commander Taeyang eventually retired from active military service. But he did not leave the sector. He became the security chief for the research station, a position that let him see Day every day. Sometimes, people found him floating in space beside the creature, both of them watching ships come and go. Neither needing to speak, more travelers came through the portal to visit. Some stayed for weeks or months, learning about this dimension and sharing knowledge from their own. Cultural exchanges became common. The travelers taught sonic composition, and council musicians incorporated those techniques into new art forms. Council scientists helped the travelers understand technologies they could not naturally develop without manipulating physical objects. 3 years after first contact, something remarkable happened. The dimensional portal destabilized unexpectedly, showing readings that suggested another portal was trying to form nearby. Using everything they had learned from Day and the travelers, Bo-Ra's team managed to stabilize both portals. The second one opened into yet another dimension, and through it came something completely different from the travelers. The first contact protocols were ready this time. No weapons. Calm approach. Attempt communication before assuming threat. The lesson had been learned. Jiwoo floated beside Day as they watched the new portal. She was older now, her hair showing the first traces of gray, but her eyes still held that same gentle curiosity that had saved so many lives. She reached over and scratched the spot behind Day's sensory ridge, the gesture automatic after years of friendship. Day rumbled with contentment, then created a light pattern that made Jiwoo laugh. On Earth, in classrooms and universities across the human homeworld, the story was taught to every student. The story of Dr. Jiwoo and the creature that everyone feared. The story of how compassion had succeeded where weapons failed. The story of how one person choosing to understand instead of attack had changed the galaxy. The image from that first contact became iconic. A small human in a spacesuit, reaching out to touch the scales of a massive creature, while the darkness of space surrounded them both. It was printed on posters, carved into monuments, referenced in speeches about peace and diplomacy. It reminded people that sometimes the bravest thing was not to fight, but to extend your hand in friendship. Ambassador Hei-Wan, now retired, kept a copy of that image in her home. Sometimes she looked at it and thought about how close they had come to tragedy. If Jiwoo had not suggested a different approach, if the council had not been desperate enough to try, if Day had not been patient enough to give them a chance. So many small decisions that had led to this better outcome. Council member Kyung-soo used the story in diplomatic training. He told new ambassadors about the importance of understanding, about how fear could blind you to possibilities, about how the newest and least experienced member of a team might see solutions that veterans missed. He always ended with the same message. Listen first. Understand before you judge. Choose compassion when you can. And in Sector 9, on a station that now bustled with life from dozens of dimensions, Jiwoo continued her work. She studied new species that came through the portals. She helped establish communication protocols. She taught young scientists how to approach the unknown, with curiosity instead of fear. But every day, she made time to float beside Day in the peaceful darkness of space. She would scratch that special spot behind the sensory ridge, and Day would rumble with contentment. The sound of a creature that had once roared at everyone in terror and pain, but had learned that some beings could be trusted. That friendship was possible across any divide. That love and understanding could exist even between a massive dimensional traveler and a small human with a gentle voice. The beast had roared at everyone, then rolled over when the human scratched its belly. And in doing so, both of them had changed the galaxy forever.